So we've heard in the news recently there's been a lot of layoffs for Telltale Games. I'd like to give you a few of my thoughts on that, as well as my thoughts on some of the more recent releases from Telltale Games. I don't really know what Telltale Games has been doing recently. They've been pumping out games like crazy. They've been pumping out so many series at once. Even though they have episodic release dates, they've been pumping out so many series. It's like they're cutting into their own sales. So just to give you an idea, like some of them have ended recently, but the three series that they've had going on at once Guardians of the Galaxy, they have the Batman, I think the Enemy Within, and they also have Minecraft Story Mode Season 2. And it's weird because they have so much going on at once, and then I think, well, they recently finished the third season of the episodic Walking Dead series, but it's just so weird because they just keep pumping out so many games at once to the point where I honestly think that, yeah, they're cutting into their own sales. So we heard in the news recently that, Telltale Games has had to lay off a quarter of their staff, which is a pretty astonishing number. It really does tell me something bad's going on. It really tells me that they're doing some weird business practices. It's like they're not making good games anymore. Now, if you've played the games recently, the games have gone stale. They've always been stale for a little while, like ever since. I think that some of the peaks were The Wolf Among Us and the first season of Walking Dead. That was kind of the peak. Both of those games had influence on the company in the sense that Telltale Games has ended up changing the way they make games from those two games onwards. Like now they make their games more like a movie with just simple button presses. The old Telltale Games, like let me think. I know Sam & Max was one of the old ones I used to play. The old Telltale Games, they used to actually be more puzzle-based. They used to be much shorter, but they were puzzle-based. They didn't try to be all cinematic and stuff. Now they're trying to be all cinematic. That's not to say The Wolf Among Us is bad. No. Like, the first season of Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us, those were actually pretty welcoming games. One good game as well that they had was Tales from the Borderlands. I actually don't like the story and lore of Borderlands that much. I just don't like it that much. I find the gameplay sometimes it gets a little bit repetitive. I found Borderlands to be fun at first, back when it released. I forget the year, but it's actually a pretty old series now. It's almost like not a decade ago, but I want to say maybe 2009, 2010 was when the first game released. And, I liked it at first, but then I found that the gameplay, it kept getting repetitive with, like, Borderlands 2, and then you had Borderlands, the pre-sequel, I think they called it. Yeah, that was it. And those games, I didn't like it that much afterwards, but I actually really liked Tales from the Borderlands. It actually had really witty dialogue. Like, it was the same of the new Telltale Games. Like, it was still like a movie. You mash the buttons, the QTEs, QuickTime events, that kind of stuff. But it actually had a few funny jokes within it, so those three games were okay. But then you had a lot of stinkers coming from Telltale Games. The Walking Dead Season 2, the problem with that Walking Dead Season 2 Telltale Games I'm talking about, of course, is that they were misleading. Telltale Games led us to believe that our decisions from Season 1, as well as DLC that was between Season 1 and Season 2, I forget what it was, I think it was called 400 Days. They led us to believe that, all of the choices that you made in 400 Days and Walking Dead Season 1 will be extremely impactful in Season 2. And then when you play Season 2, all it changes is like one or two lines of dialogue. I think a lot of people were very disappointed from that, and, people were just disappointed about how your choices didn't matter that much. You could actually get a lot of characters killed in the first season of Walking Dead. It would actually feel like a little bit different each time, but with Season 2, it just got really shitty. And then afterwards, Telltale Games just kept making more and more shitty clunkers, So then, let me think of what else came out. There was actually Walking Dead Michonne spinoff, which is actually a very weird title for them to make, because the show, I've read the comics for Walking Dead, and I'm not going to spoil what happens, but it's basically meant, the Michonne series that Telltale made, it's supposed to take place in between a time gap that happens in the comic, and I guess it'll eventually happen in the show as well. And it's weird that they released it like a few years back, because people wouldn't know unless you actually read all of the comics and stuff. You wouldn't actually really know that what happens. It's not really canonical as well, but it did show a few interesting tidbits on Michonne's life, like how she actually was really business oriented. I believe she was actually a lawyer and all of that kind of stuff, and she regrets how she didn't spend more time with her kids before the whole apocalypse happened. But the game itself was pretty shitty. It's non-canonical, and you know that they're not going to kill off Michonne and stuff, so it's just, it's kind of shitty. And then there's a few other shitty games that Telltale Games has been releasing. I played Minecraft Story Mode Season 1, and I think that there were a few witty lines, funny lines in between, but for the most part, it wasn't really an eventful series. But it's weird because they actually originally planned out it to only be 5 episodes, but they ended up extending it to like maybe 8 or 9 episodes. I played them all, and I did like how each episode was its own thing. Like, it wasn't like a really slow story. No, each episode was like episodic, and it would have you taking down a different villain within each episode. But it wasn't really eventful. It was kind of the same old formula. Then the same thing happened with Batman. I guess I'll just call it Season 1. Batman Season 1. Again, it was kind of interesting because you could choose between whether you want to do an event as Batman, or you could choose to do it as Bruce Wayne, the human. You could be like a fancy rich guy at the party, or you can choose to do things like, combat style Batman. So it was kind of interesting you had those choices, but again, a lot of people felt like they didn't represent the villains that well, and they kept using the old villains again, like in the first season of Batman Telltale Games. I'm thinking of the antagonists. They pretty much used Harvey, and Harvey has been really overrepresented in the Batman franchise, like in the movies and stuff. You always see him. They could have had an opportunity to use like a lesser known villain. That would have been really interesting, but oh no, let's do this guy, and then let's have also portray a new portrayal of the Penguin. And again, it's just, of course, these comics they show them with kind of different backstories. It's not really consistent with the comics. That's fine, but I didn't feel like what they introduced was fresh enough. Again, I respect that Telltale Games can't do whatever they want. They actually have licenses with these franchises, Walking Dead and Batman. They have licenses, and they have to probably go back to these people and say, this is what we want to do, and they probably have to get a lot of permission for them to actually like do the storyline, so that they can't do whatever they want with the storyline, of course, because it's not really they're just getting permission to make a video game version of the IP. They don't actually own Batman or anything like that, so I can imagine there's a lot of back and forth, rigmarole, this kind of stuff. But again, I feel like they should have just I wish they could have gone with some kind of lesser known villain. It would have been so cool. It's just a wasted opportunity. And then you have the typical story, yeah, there's Gordon, the police chief, and it didn't really feel unique. And the weirdest thing is that as of this year, very, very recently, Telltale Games is just doing the same old games again, and they're making sequels we didn't really ask for. Oh yeah, Season 2 of Batman. Oh yeah, Minecraft Story Mode Season 2. I don't know why they're doing this, and people didn't really ask for it. I don't think the episodes were that well received. I feel like it might be possible that maybe they just got the contracts renewed, the licenses and the contracts, whatever, from these IPs, so they said, okay, might as well use it. We don't have anything better, might as well use them up. And it is kind of a shame because, Telltale Games has never really made... in recent years, they really haven't made anything on their own. They always have to borrow from different IPs and stuff, but I just wish they could have just done something more unique in the more recent years. Now people who actually, I didn't even mind. I used to love the old puzzle games they used to make. I didn't mind when they started making them more like movies and stuff. I didn't mind at all. But now it's just getting really repetitive. It just doesn't feel unique at all. And now they keep reusing. Originally, their proprietary engine, they have their own engine like and stuff that they use to make their games. Originally, it was okay, but now it's feeling outdated. The games are not really well optimized. They're pretty glitchy, which is really weird. The games are not well optimized at all. You'd be playing it on a console and you'd get frame drops even though it's not even a graphically or CPU intensive game. It's weird. And yeah, the graphics are kind of getting outdated, and you know, the style doesn't really look that good either. It gets kind of old after a while. Yeah, it makes sense for the Borderlands game, the style that they have, but otherwise, you know, the characters look kind of cheaply made. It's like some kind of Google SketchUp shit, and then you have little scratches on the character. It doesn't look that good. So am I really surprised by what has happened with Telltale Games? Not really. It's, you know, it's just a sign of a company not innovating. It's not easy to innovate. They're stuck in a bad situation as a company because as a developer, they have to keep using all of these famous IPs. It's like they're riding on the coattails of bigger IPs. They don't have anything of their own. It's sad, but it's just it worked for them in the past, but now they've been kind of getting dealt a shitty hand, and there's not much they can do. It's not like they have the resources or the funding to make a completely new engine or make their own IP. No, they can't really do that at all. They're kind of stuck against a wall. Yeah, it's big signs of a company failing. I know that in other industries, like completely unrelated industries, I know there's some companies who have, you know, survived just off of government grants and government funding and subsidies alone, and those are actually kind of signs that the company's going to fail soon. It's like, oh yeah, I make this product, and then all of a sudden they start losing money, and then they have to get government funding and stuff. It's almost like how Telltale Games is ending up. They're really like stretching it thin. I'm surprised that they had so many employees though, because they said that they laid off 90 employees, so that means they must have like almost 400 employees alone, which is surprising. I would have expected that this game development studio was a bit smaller. I know that not all of the people are game developers. They probably have a lot of accountants, lawyers, receptionists, whatnot, but still, it is pretty surprising that it's so big of a company. And it's sad because they actually do put a lot of work into their games. Like, they try to make the interfaces better. They try to do everything to innovate in that's possible in a cheap way. They've tried to implement live streaming. They've had a contract with Mixer recently, but not many people use Mixer. It's too bad. But they also have group decisions. That was interesting. But again, most of the people who live stream are only a small proportion of all of the people who are going to play your game, unfortunately. I mean, yeah, it is good what they did, but it is kind of late for that end. And not everyone, not the common casual consumer is going to really be interested in those group decisions. Most likely they would have just bought one copy of the game and just sat in a room with friends playing it. I actually used to do that too. It was pretty fun just to have a group of friends and we'd all quickly try to decide which decision we want to do for the Wolf Among Us and this kind of stuff. It is sad, but it happens. What do I think is going to happen in the future, though? I think that, yeah, the company is going to go down. I think most likely in the gaming industry, they're going to just get bought out by someone else, and then I'm sure they'll have some purpose or something. I'm not sure if they're going to keep making niche games like this. Maybe whoever buys them out will make them a slave and make them make Telltale Games of their own games, of their own IPs. That'd be pretty funny, but I don't see anything really good happening with the company. I only foresee more layoffs in the future for them, and yeah, it's just the hand that they're stuck with. I just can't really think of what else they can do. Walking Dead was amazing for them, and it really like boosted their revenue, boosted their reputation a lot, but now it's just not going good. I'm not sure what else they can do. I forgot to list a few of the other games. They have the contract with Guardians of the Galaxy. That game, I finished it up recently. It was okay. I mean, again, it has witty dialogue in between some places, but again, it's the same old gameplay. What else? There was another game I'm missing. I know there's another game I'm missing, but again, it's... Oh, yeah, they had Game of Thrones. That was a pretty big disappointment, actually. That was actually pretty shitty done. And again, it's because the creators of the IP, they don't want them using too many of the real characters, and you know that the characters are going to be, they're going to have plot armor, they're going to be immune, they can't just, die off in this. I know that it is common sense. The Telltale games are stuck in a shitty situation. I keep saying that, but it's true. Because of the fact that they're over-reliant on other IPs, they have to do whatever they say. It's all part of the contracts. And yeah, although it is pretty amazing that they've established so many good contracts with all these IPs, like Guardians of the Galaxy, Batman, this, that, it's just, it's not their own stuff. It sucks. I mean, I like their game. Maybe in the future they'll lay off more people and they'll end up going back to very, very niche, more puzzle-based point-and-click games rather than these kind of movie-like games. What they did was interesting for the time, but now it's getting really stale. New IPs are not going to save them from keep making stale games. It's just not good at all. If you like the content within this video, please consider giving it a like. Also, please consider subscribing to our channel so that you can be the first to receive all of our latest videos.